Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Yoginamapi sarvesham Madgatenantar Atmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam Same yuktatamo mataha Yoginam of yogis Api also Sarvesham all types of Madgatena abiding in me, always thinking of me. Anta Atmana, within himself. Shraddhavan, in full faith. Bhajate, renders transcendental loving service. Yaha, one who. Mam, to me, the Supreme Lord. Saha, he. Me, by me. Yuktatamaha, the greatest yogi. Mataha is considered. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental, loving service to me, is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Please repeat. And of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So we have a very long purport. The director has instructed to do half of the purport today. So we'll read the first part. Purport. The word bhajate is significant here. Bhajate has its root in the word bhaj, which is used when there is need of service. The English word worship cannot be used in the same sense as bhaj. Worship means to adore, or to show respect and honor to the worthy one. But service with love and faith is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can avoid worshiping a respectable man or a demigod and may be called discourteous. But one cannot avoid serving the Supreme Lord without being thoroughly condemned. Every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And thus, every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord by his own constitution. Failing to do this, he falls down. The Bhagavatam 11.5.3 confirms this as follows. Ya esham purusham shakshat atma prabhavan ishvaram nabhajanti avajananti stanat bristat patayanti adaha. Anyone who does not render service and neglects his duty unto the primeval Lord, who is the source of all living entities, will certainly fall down from his constitutional position. We're going to read a little bit further in the purport, but before we go on, I would like to invite us to think about the instruction given so far in this purport, that Prabhupada is directing us to make the distinction between the word service and worship, and he is pointing out that we cannot avoid service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but we can avoid service to a demigod or ordinary living entity. But I would like to invite us today to think of this in terms of our relationship with the spiritual master. And for us to just take a moment and do an internal check to see, an internal gauge to see, are we really serving our spiritual master, or are we worshiping our spiritual master? It's for you to do an internal check, not to look at me. Just think about it yourself in your own practice. So it's very convenient and easy to worship the spiritual master and avoid service to the spiritual master. It's very easy to do the rituals in the puja and the formality of practice to the spiritual master, and then to maybe compliment oneself to think, I'm doing okay, I'm doing prescribed sadhana. But to serve the spiritual master is a little different. It's different than simply worshiping of the spiritual master. Let's continue with the purport. Like that. Would somebody like to read the next purport, please? Anyone? Ladies, gentlemen.
Also, the word bhajanti is used. Therefore, bhajanti is applicable to the Supreme Lord only, whereas the word worship can be applied to demigods or to any other common living entity. The word avajananti, used in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, is also found in the Bhagavad-Gita, avajanti mamudha. Only the fools and rascals derive the Supreme Personality of Godhead for Krishna. Such fools take it upon themselves to write commentaries on the Bhagavad-Gita without an attitude of service to the Lord. Consequently, they cannot properly distinguish between the word bhajanti and the word worship.
Okay, does anyone know where that verse, avajanati mamudha, is? Anyone know that verse? Everyone has Bhagavad-Gita? Anyone know this verse, avajanati mamudha? Let's find that verse.
It's 9th chapter 11.
Might be, but let's make sure. Let's make sure so we can all learn it today. Prabhupada has given this to us. Let's find. You said
Chapter 11. Verse.
chapter 11. What verse?
9th chapter 11.
9:11. So let's go to 9:11. Is that correct? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Haribo! Haribo! Our scholar today. Thank you. Haribo. Okay, do you know that verse? Okay, can you give it to us, please?
Abajananti mamudha.
Avajanati mamudha.
Manushim tanumasritam.
Manusim tanurasritam.
Bhavam majananto.
Param bhava majananto.
Bhuta maheshwaram.
Mama bhuta maheshwaram. So please repeat. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So here Prabhupada is explaining also to us that people who do not understand the actual nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is a very, very difficult thing to do, to comprehend, actually, that the all-pervasive Supreme Divine Brahman can manifest itself in a form just like you and I. It's a very difficult thing. If you try to think about it, it becomes very bewildering to the mind. It becomes very perplexing because the mind cannot comprehend. But that is the incomprehensible nature of Brahman. So Krishna says that those who do not understand that I am Para Brahman, then when they see me as a human beings, they deride. They say, oh, Krishna, he's just like, what was the name of that guy who said that Krishna is just like, he put on the other two arms, what was his name? Was it Pondrika? Was it Pondrika? Yeah, so he said, okay, that Krishna is Vishnu, I'm Vishnu too. And he put on his plastic arms or whatever, I guess in those days wooden arms or metal arms or whatever. Because people cannot understand how the Brahman comes and acts like human beings, because we see ourselves as human beings, we are imperfect. But actually, just like it says in the Abrahamic religion, that man is made in the image of God. So it's not that God comes and looks like us, it's that we are created, we actually look something like God. Okay. But Krishna, at the same time, the unique thing and wonderful thing about the appearance of Krishna is that Krishna says that this body that I'm in is not like your body. So we'll have to come back to that, to this portion of the verse here. Because remember, Krishna, the key word that Krishna uses in this verse here, which is applicable to us to understand this, is that key word, scholar? Shraddha. Faith. Faith. And I'm not talking about faith or referring to the explanation of faith in this verse in the terms of a belief system, but in terms of a theological concept of a belief in something that's beyond the physical comprehension. So that was the second paragraph so far. We'll go on and read one more. Anybody have any input or comments so far? We're talking about, we want to just kind of think about keeping in the forefront of our awareness the differentiation between worship and service. Worship and service. In our relationship with not only Bhagavan Krishna himself, but with the spiritual master, because the spiritual master is the direct representation of Krishna. I think I told this story before, is that when I first became a devotee, my cohorts and myself, we had no idea what was Krishna. Prabhupada was always telling us every day about Krishna, Krishna. Prabhupada actually rarely ever talked about himself. And he rarely ever talked about service to the spiritual master or anything like that. But he always talked about Krishna. And he always told us about Krishna. And he made us feel confident that we had a relationship with this person called Krishna. And as, at least for myself, as I got to know Prabhupada better, I became convinced that, well, I don't know what God is, I don't know what Krishna is, but he must be in this person. This person must be a manifestation of Krishna. Because Prabhupada, his behavior, his activities, his abilities were so super, give me a word. Huh? Superhuman. Thank you. They really were superhuman. It's like you could walk into the room and Prabhupada, he would just look at you and he would tell you what you're thinking. Not literally, he wouldn't say you're thinking this, but he would just look at you and you would know that he knows what I'm thinking. So then, even if you had a question for him, you didn't have to ask the question. Because then he would let you know inside, this is the answer. So a lot of times you would sometimes go into Prabhupada's room and you would feel stressful or anxiety and you want to ask him something and you go and then he would look at you with big, beautiful, soft eyes like a deer, like a cow, not eyes like a tiger. A lot of times we look at each other with eyes like a tiger. In America we call it shotgun eyes, where you're looking through a shotgun. So sometimes you walk down the street, people are looking at you like they're ready to attack you just by looking at you. It's not a unique thing to India, it's all over the world. People, when they look at you, they look at with you very suspicious, piercing, distrusting, cunning, worried eyes. But Prabhupada, he would look at you with these soft eyes, just like a big cow. He would like a deer, just beautiful. And if you could for a moment look in his eyes, you would look in his eyes, then this feeling of peace would overflood you. See that picture up there? Everyone see the picture behind you? See how his eyes, how his eyes kind of like just look dropping down upon. He actually, this was a living experience you would have with him. So many times, many devotees were always very, very eager, not only to get a word, but even just to get a glance of Prabhupada. This is something that's hard to describe, but it really is true. So, having this kind of experience in Prabhupada's association, you just kind of felt that Prabhupada was superhuman and this must be Krishna. Okay. And you really felt that Krishna was directly manifesting through Prabhupada. So let's read the next. Let's read the next purport. Someone read that. Yes, read that. Please, read that.
The termination of life and thought.
Read loud, loud. Okay.
The culmination of all kinds of yoga practice lies in bhakti-yoga. All other yogas are what meant to come to the point of bhakti in the bhakti-yoga. Yoga actually means bhakti-yoga. All other yogas are progressions towards the destination of bhakti-yoga. From the beginning of bhakti-yoga to the end of bhakti-yoga is a long way to self-realization. Karma-yoga without results in the beginning of the path. When Karma-yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, the stage is called Jnana-yoga. When Jnana-yoga increases in meditation on the surface of the different physical processes and the mind is on him, it is called Ashtanga-yoga. And when one surpasses the Ashtanga-yoga and comes to the point of the true personality of God, Krishna, it is called bhakti-yoga. In culmination, actually, the bhakti-yoga is the ultimate goal. But no analyzed bhakti-yoga, mindfully, one has to understand these other yogas. Yogi who is progressing is therefore on the true path of eternal good fortune. One who sticks to a particular point and does not make further progress is called by the particular name Karma-yoga, Karma-yogi, Jnana-yogi or Jnana-yogi, Raj-yogi, Bhakti-yogi, etc. If one is fortunate enough to come to the point of bhakti-yoga, it is to be understood that he has surpassed all other yogas. Therefore, to become Krishna conscious is the highest stage of yoga. just as when we speak of Himalaya, we refer to God's highest mountains, of which the highest peak, Mount Everest, is considered to be the culmination.
So now at this particular point, even if we don't have this direct knowledge and realization of the yoga ladder and understanding, we go back and look at the verse. Prabhupada has given us some information here about the sequential practice of yoga. And it's a matter of really, back to this word shraddha, if one has faith in the spiritual master, in Prabhupada's words, then one does not have to spend a lot of time trying to say, well, maybe Prabhupada wasn't right, maybe, this kind of yoga is a little bit superior and things like that. But in this, ultimately, this is a wonderful how Krishna ends this chapter on this personal note to Arjuna. If we go back and just kind of just do a quick summary review of the chapter here. In the very beginning of the chapter, verses 1 and 2, Krishna is bringing us to the point of understanding and defining what is yoga. Understanding that the yoga is the same as sannyas. And really the definition of yoga, Krishna says that nobody can become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Therefore, yoga and blank are the same. Huh? Sannyas. Yeah. Then, that's the first couple of verses right there. Then Krishna in the third verse, if you want to follow on page 276, I'm just going to do a quick overview of this chapter right quick. Then in the third verse, Krishna gives us the means of attainment. The practical application of the beginner yogi and the advanced practitioner. Correct? Okay, correct. Okay. That's verses number 3. And then, after that, after setting up the idea of what is yoga, so we can really understand right here, immediately we go to the very beginning of this chapter, we see how most people in the world have a misunderstanding of what yoga is. Right? Because Krishna never in any place tells us that yoga is for curing the kidneys or curing the headache or, being able to have a baby, or to change the gray hairs or sciatica. But this is why people are going to do yoga. But Krishna starts off by telling us that yoga is the same as sannyas. Sannyas. And then he tells us what is the nature of the practitioner of the yoga. And then what does he do? He doesn't talk about the body after the definition. What does he talk about? The mind. The mind. Come on this side. Don't let this side give all the answers. Come on, you guys got to... I know you guys know. So then he goes, he talks directly, immediately he talks about the mind. What is the very first thing he says in verse number 5? What does he tells us that we must do to practice yoga? You must use the mind to deliver yourself and not degrade yourself. Okay? And then he talks about, from the next verses 5, 6, and 7, he gives us sort of a hint of how we should relate to the mind. And he tells us the distinction between relating to the mind in a forceful way and a non-forceful way. Between a soft approach and a hard approach. So he says if you use the hard approach with the mind, then the mind will what? Huh? What? Enemy. Enemy. If you use the soft approach, the mind would be what? Would be the friend. Your best friend or your worst enemy? So he's giving us a little bit of psychology here, but he's saying that this mind is the instrument which we're going to use to practice yoga. Right? Not the arms, not the leg. The mind is the instrument that we're going to use to practice yoga. And then also, after talking and giving us an introduction to the psychology, verse number 7, he tells us what's the result of engaging the mind in the practice of yoga. That the result is that we will do what? We will, number 7?
One has conquered the mind. He has already reached the free personal Godhead.
So that he's saying that you will attain tranquility and you will be in touch with the super soul by conquering and controlling the mind. So right here, even we have 40 more verses left. The 7th verse right here is enough conviction for us to practice yoga. Because it's saying here that if you just do this little part here, then you will be in touch with the super soul. Okay? Now we go to verse number 8 and 9. Krishna is telling us about the symptoms of such a person. And what are some of those symptoms of the person who's in touch with the super soul or attained tranquility? Satisfaction. What are some other symptoms? Knowledge. Self-realization. Which one? Tolerant. Self-control. And how does he see things? So he sees the wood, the marble, the diamond, the rubies, all the same. Okay? This is the person who is in contact with the super soul. But a person who's even more advanced than that, how does he see things? What does Krishna say?
Honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, mediators.
Yeah. So Krishna says that the first darshan is that one sees inanimate objects in an equal way. Then the higher darshan than that is that one sees the living entities equally. Not the living entities who just simply you like. Not just the people who are your fellow countrymen, but your enemies. And those who bless you. So that means that you'll come to a point where you'll be able to see the person who treats you in a very evil way with the same type of vision that you see your own baby or your own grandmother. So then that's verse 8 and 9. Now, after Krishna has kind of introduced to us what is the goal, what's going to happen to you, now he gets down to business and he tells Arjuna how you do it. Right? So he gives the practical steps, the practical application. So the practical application, first one of them is, what is that? What is that? Huh? You got to find yourself a quiet place. Some other secluded place.
Should always carefully control his mind.
Carefully control the mind. So see that carefully is there. How that's a beautiful word.
Free from desires and feelings of possessiveness.
So we have to kind of let ourselves become free from the habitual impulses of the mind, which are basically the desires that the mind has. And everybody, you and I, you all know what your desires are. You wake up with them every morning. I wake up with mine. And you wake up with your possessiveness, and I wake up with mine. So those are the things that Krishna is saying that we have to free ourselves from. Okay? And then he tells you some practical application, how to practice, which is?
Engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You should live alone in a secluded place.
Yes. Okay. So then he tells you how to sit and how that you should purify the heart by controlling the mind and senses. And then he goes on and tells you, now it's only at this point, 13 to 14, does he even start talking really about the body. Right? So he's telling that how to sit. Right? How you have to control the sexual urge. How you should fix the gaze. And then in verse 15, he says that by this practice, then what will be the result of the practice? You enter into the kingdom of God. Into the kingdom of God. So we have a couple of very already strong claims by Krishna. First claim is that if you practice like this, if you do this, then you will be in touch with the Supreme Self. And that right there is a tempting endeavor on its own, right? I mean, wouldn't everybody want to always be in touch with their Supreme Self as opposed to their inferior self? Would anybody? Yeah. So that's the first reward that Krishna offers us. Now the second reward, after he describes the practical application here, he says that one will enter into the kingdom of God. Okay? So that's, huh? Huh?
The do's and the don'ts.
The do's and the
Not the don't eat too much.
Well, after now he talks about that next. But first he gives us some motivation. Yeah. You see, Krishna, he doesn't first immediately talk about the do's and the don'ts yet. First, he motivates us to get involved, to get engaged. And he gives us some very exciting goals to try to attain. Super soul consciousness, the kingdom of God. Now, there's a prerequisite for that, then comes the do's and the don'ts. Now, what are the do's and the don'ts?
There's no possibility of once becoming a yogi.
Huh?
Once eat too much, eats too little, sleeps too much, does not sleep enough. Not eat too much, not to eat too less. Not to sleep too much, not to sleep too less.
So this is a very, very easy, simple practice of yoga that Krishna is giving. Really. This is... You look at all the great yoga teachers, even Mahadev, Shankar, Bhagavan, Shiva himself. And then you look at the common yoga teachers, the processes they give are very, very complex. Krishna gives a very, very easy, practical process here. Control the mind and do these things. Sit like this, go here and sit like this. Put the mind here. Don't eat too much and don't eat too little. Don't sleep too much and don't sleep too little. Don't play too much and don't play too little. It's a very, very easy practice of yoga that Krishna is recommending. Samjha? TK? Understand? Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada did the same. First he encouraged devotees and then he gave 4 regulative principles. So he didn't give these 4 regulative principles in the beginning, right in the beginning. He gave it later on. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada, he acted in the same way like Krishna. Here, I mean, there is some parallel.
Teaching method. Teaching method is the same. First, the idea is to get involved, get engaged. And then once you get engaged, you'll understand the procedures. See? Just like we see outside, I think we have a policeman, a military man, right? When you first join the service, you don't know all the rules and regulations, right, sir? Okay. But once you get involved, then you understand, you get the manual. And it tells you many, many things. So first, Krishna is encouraging us to get involved, and he's given us the incentive to get involved, which is the super soul, and the other incentive is the kingdom of God. And then we have the do's and the don'ts, and we're up to, and now Krishna says by practicing like this, then he tells us, now he comes back again to the practical outcome and tells us about what will be the symptom of such an individual. And we look, he starts to verse number 18, 19, he talks about how that
His mental activities becomes timid and transcendent, devoid of all material desires. He is said to be well established in yoga.
and this is so beautiful, it's so amazing. Krishna is saying here that if you practice like this is what will happen. You'll be established in yoga. Yes.
No, I was just wondering, like, okay, first you mentioned that yoga is the same as sannyas, and then you went on. And I'm wondering if that in itself, just the way of sitting, the way of controlling the mind, gives access to the super soul, and then even to enter the kingdom of God without aspect of any type of bhakti, like, how should I understand that? That's sufficient to...
No, we haven't gotten there yet. But that's the end. But Krishna is telling us here about yoga and sannyas. First Krishna, see, previously in the previous chapters, Krishna has talked about being a sannyasi. Now Krishna is telling Arjuna that there's no difference between being a yogi and a sannyasi. They're both the same. And now because he says that no one can be a yogi unless he's a sannyasi.
Mainly renounces the desire for sense gratification.
Yes.
Still, it doesn't establish relationship as such, right? With Krishna.
No, well, actually it does. See, because you'll see that many times throughout, up to this point, let's see if Krishna has established that as of yet. That's a very, very, very good observation. But I can guarantee you that it will. But up until this point, I would say that you are perhaps right. So it looks like that now. It looks like that now. So you're actually on the right path. Yeah. 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 So now Krishna, what he's doing, he tells us the symptom of the person who has achieved yoga. So he talks about what is samadhi. He gives the example of the analogy of the lamp in the windless place. Yeah. All the time he keeps coming back. No, it's for the audience, I think. So let's keep in mind here up until this point, because our minds have so far at this point, along with Arjuna, have become clear as to what actually yoga is, according to Krishna's definition. Now, of course, this is not the same as Mr. Patanjali or other people. This is according to Krishna. His system of yoga is basically working with the mind, going into the kingdom of God, and now he's telling us about what the symptoms are. That's very elaborate. That's the verse 23. And look at verse 24. He gives you again a recommendation how to practice. Recommendation, he said you should practice with determination and faith.
Abandon all the material desires.
Yeah. And not go away from it. Just keep on practicing it. Okay? Okay. Then he gives you some encouragement, because he's also knowing that every student is going to be faced with some difficulty along the way. So he kind of breaks it down in a sequential kind of vision for you. And he tells you what you should do is that, verse 25, that you should do what? Step by step, become situated in trance. Don't try to run into it tomorrow. Or don't try to become the Kmart pure devotee. Kmart's a convenience store in America where you can just buy anything like that. So step by step, with full conviction, should establish this trance-like state. Okay? And then he also gives more encouragement to Arjuna because Krishna already foresees what the problem of the student is. Verse 26. See, Krishna is already the master seer. He knows what the difficulties are that you're going to face along the way. Just like your professor in school has already been in that class before, so he knows what difficulty you will experience. So he'll give you some suggestions, or she will. So Krishna, he tells Arjuna in 26, how does he speak to Arjuna?
Wherever the mind wanders due to flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self.
Yeah. So he tells Arjuna, he encourages Arjuna to keep on. Then he tells Arjuna, verse 28, by continually practicing, now your answer is there. In verse number 29, because in verse number 29, Krishna now makes it personal. And he tells Arjuna, you can read it out loud because you had that, the microphone is there for you. Yes, ma'am.
A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere.
Okay. So now Krishna starts to make it personal, but not in the beginning. And we can analyze and talk about that for a long time if we want to also, because we're basically impersonalists and we sometimes don't like, we like to hear more technical things first. The technical information first before we get convinced to buy the product. Right? So Krishna starts out, he gives the technical data first. Now we're at verse number 29, so we're already halfway through the explanation, and then Krishna starts talking about himself. Now he continues to even expand upon himself to describe what an actual practitioner of yoga, the symptoms are. How that person thinks and sees things. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So here, now you see, at the end, remember we had the word Shraddha, Krishna used the word faith. And he's bringing out that faith, that principle of faith here. He says, I am never lost to that person, nor is that person ever lost to me. Okay. Continue on with 31. Krishna again, he's talking about how the yogi actually always engage in the service of me as the super soul. He knows that I am that supreme self within himself, that we're both one. Okay. So then such a person remains always in me in all circumstances. And you could just go from here right now, from verse 31 over to verse 47. Couldn't you? Because you could see the correlation here. Okay? So can someone read verse 31? Loudly.
Such a yogi who engages in the worshipable service of the Super Soul, knowing that I and the Supreme Soul and the Super Soul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances.
Now someone read verse 47. Let's give him the microphone. Give him the microphone. Anybody.
And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me He is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and he is the highest of all. That is my opinion.
Well, what is a good exercise is to now take this last verse and then go back to any reference where Krishna is talking about me, and then see the correlation of how to build up this personal interaction here with Krishna. Okay. So that was verse, what verse is that? 33 that we had just stopped at. Now, Krishna's going to go back again to some of the technology of the application in verse 32 with that personal criteria of his personal engagement involved here. So Krishna says, now see, first he talked about that by practicing yoga, as you go through the steps, then you'll come to the point where you'll see all inanimate things equally. Then you'll see all animate things equally. But that was, he hadn't interjected his personality into the situation yet. Now with his personality interjected, he's going to again repeat that same symptomology of the practitioner or the person who's achieved yoga. Look at verse 32. What does he say there? Someone read that one.
He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress.
Yes. So here Krishna is also showing how that the yogi, after he's had contact with the Supersoul and he sees Krishna everywhere, then he has a very, very compassionate vision. So compassion is actually one of the qualities of Radharani. It's described by Rupa Goswami in that song. There's no, that's a different subject. But compassion is one of the qualities. I guess Narottam Das Thakur, who describes Radharani as she's very friendly, she's kind, and she's compassionate. And there's another quality too I can't remember right now. But yeah, so compassion is that we see the others in their happy state and their distressed state. We see their equality. We can look at them equally. So in other words, you can feel the person, the experience of the person, and the different emotional ups and downs of that person's life. Now, we can go on elaborating and discussing a lot of detail here, because it's very rich food here, information. But what does Arjuna do at this point? Huh?
Just say that it's not possible to control the mind. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, he said, Krishna, what you're saying to me, I'm interested in doing it. I appreciate the idea, and I believe you, but it's not for me. He said, because the mind he gives us, he says it's impractical and not durable. I couldn't continue acting like that. For two reasons, Arjuna here is enlightening us as to the functioning nature of the mind, is his mind. Those two things that we want to keep in mind, that Arjuna says to Krishna, that the mind is two things which are restless and unsteady. Restless and unsteady. So the mind is very, very, what has a lot of Raja nature, Rajagun happening, a lot of neural activity. And then again, Arjuna elaborates more about the mind. He says that the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. So there's four: turbulent, restless, obstinate, and very strong. And you can just remember now, because all of us, we're sitting here in class and it appears that the mind is very, very controlled. But if you now you can just reflect on, let's say, when you're sleeping at night, and now look at your dream and see how the mind is acting in that dream. There's a lot of turbulence. The mind is restless, you know, and has a control over you. Very, very powerful. Okay. Yeah. So Arjuna now is helping us to identify what our real concerns are in practicing yoga. Okay? And we're all... But, you know, Krishna... Okay. And Arjuna is very, very wonderful because Arjuna doesn't have to spend all day trying to explain what his problem is. Like sometimes, you know, listen to somebody's problem and it takes them a year to tell you what's wrong. You know? Arjuna just gives 4 words there to say, this is my... Oh, so now Krishna can immediately answer him, and Krishna really cuts to the chase too by answering in a very simple way. What does Krishna say to Arjuna? Possible? Yeah. So now, notice also the psychology of the relationship, because remember, Krishna and Arjuna, they're what? Friends. So see how this friendship dealing here, we can learn from the behavior of Krishna and Arjuna how to make friends with the mind. How to talk to the mind. Right? So soon as Arjuna shows his objection, Krishna doesn't now try to control Arjuna. He doesn't beat up he doesn't try to lord it over Arjuna. Right? What does he say to Arjuna? Yeah. Yeah. It's true. You are right. But we can do it. You can make it happen. And this is the formula. Okay? So Krishna here is like a great coach, let's say, of the soccer team. You know, they're down, you know. But the coach, he somehow or another gives you that enthusiasm, that strength to go out and win the game. Some way. Similarly, Krishna is, because remember now, these are 2 friends, and where are they? They're actually on the battlefield. So there's some similarity here. You know, so they're about to engage in battle. So it's a very serious situation. So Krishna, he says, yes, I agree with you. And for the person who has those symptoms, for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization, difficult work, but one whose mind is controlled, then he can do it. So for the person who is not controlling the mind, like Krishna talked about in the beginning, yes, then that problem is going to really be there, Arjuna. But for the person who is doing the control of the mind, then he will be successful. Now, Arjuna, we have about 2 or 3 more minutes and it will be done. Arjuna again has his next doubt. What is the next doubt now? Because, what is the next concern that Arjuna has?
What about if somebody knows the process but not completed? What will be?
Yes. So if I go on and I do what you say, Krishna, but I don't really complete the assignment, what's going to happen? Yeah. So now Krishna and Arjuna, he gives his relation, in relationship to his explanation of the behavior of the mind, how the mind is restless and turbulent. He says, well, doesn't such a person just get blown away just like the wind? I mean, like a cloud which is blown by the wind. Right? And he tells Krishna at this particular time and point of his actual inner concern. Right? And he opens up and confesses to Krishna his belief in Krishna's ability to help him through this dilemma. Correct? Samjha? Understand? He tells Krishna that this is my doubt. I now accept what you have told me to be true, but I'm afraid I might fail. And if I fail, I'm worried about what'll be my outcome? And this is my doubt about practicing. And I'm asking you to answer me because why? Because I believe in you. You're my friend. And I trust you. I believe in you. And so therefore, I'm asking you to clear this doubt up. Now, Krishna says that yes, for one who is engaged in such spiritual activities, one who does auspicious activities is never overcome by evil. And then he explains what is the outcome ultimately of the unsuccessful yoga. So he's acknowledging to Arjuna, you can fail. But even if you do fail, you will have a glorious outcome. Then after you have that glorious outcome, either taking birth in heaven or taking birth in a Brahmin family or a wealthy family, and you'll enjoy yourself and you have a good time because there's some sanskaras that are still left that may have made you not be successful. And once you finish doing that, Krishna says, then you'll again take to the practice. And by the virtue of that spiritual consciousness which you developed before, you'll again be drawn back. And again, you'll engage yourself as a yogi again. And that person who practices like that, who is a yogi, is better than the philosopher, the jnani, better than the ritualistic performer of sacrifices. And of all the practitioners of yoga, Krishna concludes with the ultimate motivation, the ultimate inspiration, says to Arjuna that of all the practitioners of yoga, right? One who practices with great faith, always remembering me, that person is the highest of all the yogis. Chapter 6, Ki. Haribo, Haribo. Would anyone like to add to the discussion tonight? Any other points that came up or ideas? So now, excuse me, would anyone like to add anything? Yes, sir.
When we discuss give the solution,
Yeah, speak in the microphone. Speak in the microphone.
Someone acts the evil way. Evil way.
Evil way.
Evil way.
Mm-hmm.
We have to see him as a baby. Practically, is it possible?
See him as a baby?
Like we have to act as a grandma or grandpa like this, like a baby. Practically, is it possible?
That's good. Practically impossible. That's very difficult. That's difficult. It's difficult. Yet Krishna says that by practicing this yoga system that he is given here, that we can do it. Now, that's why this question you're asking, you have to study this verse 47 very carefully, because Krishna says, if you believe in my word in faith, if you have faith in what I'm saying, then you can do it. So it's not really that you can do it on your own, ultimately, but you can do it through Krishna's mercy. And then Krishna will eventually empower you, because practically speaking, most of us, in my generation, when we met Srila Prabhupada, we were very evil people. And Prabhupada, he treated us like children and made us feel welcome. So yes, ultimately it is possible, but Krishna is showing you how to develop the skill here. Yes, I'm answering your question. That Krishna is showing you how to not be normal people. He's telling you right here how to not be normal. So this chapter 6, you can read it over and over and over, and then it'll come more information will come. Yes. More understanding, realization, and ability to do what you're speaking will come. That's why Krishna says, step by step by step. You can't do it by jumping over to it. You take one step, and sometimes you take one step, you get pushed back 2 steps. So you have to then come up 4 more steps, or 3 steps more. And you go up, and you may get pushed, but you keep on step by step, all the way gradually. Then you become situated in samadhi, trance. Then Krishna says, the greatest thing will not shake you. Earthquake, rainstorm, death, hurt and pain, hunger, insults. Krishna says that here. So that's why at the end here, this last verse, Krishna says that one who does it with faith in me, that person is the greatest of all the yogis.
So this chapter is about super soul and like Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. So again the question that Arjuna asked, how to like from the 33 and verse mind and all the questions, they are about like finally concludes like bhakti yoga like that, how to understand that progress in the Ashtanga yoga is culminating like bhakti. Krishna is telling that even if you do little bit like like short time, if you do, you get the birth in an aristocratic family or a Brahmin family. If you do a long practice, then you take birth in a transcendental family. So how that is getting connected here to bhakti, that is?
Because the whole chapter is about bhakti. It's not about Astanga, it's not about Gyan, it's only about bhakti. See, Krishna, no, hang on a second, you asked me a question, I'm going to answer you. The whole chapter is about yoga. And Krishna is explaining that the yoga that is about controlling the mind. And the ultimate outcome of controlling the mind is to be fixed in meditation on Paramatma. Now Krishna is explaining how to do this. And that's all he's talking about here. He's not talking about anything else but that. So many people who don't accept Krishna as Bhagavan, they say that Krishna means this and he means that, he means this and mean. But it's very simple. Krishna has not said anything except for control the mind, eat like this, sleep like this, and fix the mind upon me in the heart, and you'll go into trance. Krishna, he didn't say anything else in that, beyond that. But people who have their own agenda, they will explain it in those terms. That's why this particular school is just about Krishna's terms. So we're not explaining it according to Astanga, according to Patanjali, according to Shankar. We explain it according to Krishna. So Krishna, he makes it, his instruction is just so simple that we want to make it very complex. One unique thing about Prabhupada is that Prabhupada taught us how to make life and to make living and dying simple and easy. Not complex, not complicated, not making life complicated. Not making death complicated. Making it simple and easy. The Bhagavad-Gita is very simple. This whole chapter about yoga was a very simple. Now some other, Mayananda may explain it in very elaborate and go on speaking about Param Brahman and Ishta Devata and Astanga and, Yama Niyama Sama, Pranayama Pratihara Diya. But that's not even mentioned here. All Krishna talks about is pranayam, control the breath, look a certain way, and sit a certain way, and focus on controlling the mind by thinking about me in the heart. And if you hear this idea and you have faith of this kind of practice, you are the greatest of all yogis. But other people, they want to say that there's some other thing which will make them even greater, going to make you a greater yogi.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful class, and this is amazing chapter. I just for me it was I explored that this is such an amazing chapter, because in this chapter Krishna shares with us the main how we can control the mind, and he tells that we can control mind by suitable practice, which is, as Srila Prabhupada says in purport, it's the 9 kinds of process of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, and so on, and detachment, which means we have to avoid sense gratification and be detached from the matter. So, and such an easy method, and thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I would ask, yes, thank you. But remember now, we're just halfway through the purport, so there's been more.
So this Ashtanga Yoga, Dhruva Maharaj practicing Ashtanga Yoga, Prabhupada said that Ashtanga Yoga, if you take Krishna consciousness, the pranayama and everything, when you chant on Krishna, is including Ashtanga Yoga.
Yeah. And Dhruva Maharaj, remember Dhruva Maharaj lived in a different period, and he had a different body. Dhruva Maharaj also fought the Yakshas and the Rakshasas as well. And Dhruva Maharaj lives as a pole star. So Dhruva Maharaj, he could practice Dasastanga yoga, any kind of yoga. But here Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. And Arjuna is the friend of Krishna. Krishna, in this chapter, we can learn how to become Krishna's friend. Friends don't have a complicated thing. They don't have a complicated relationship. Friends. So Krishna's, this one thing we get in this is Krishna and Arjuna are friends. And Krishna's talking to his friend. So in the same way, Arjuna is showing us how to be friends with Krishna. Krishna is showing how. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Very simple, very easy. The easier.
Prabhupada said that you don't have to practice Ashtanga Yoga. You can, it's including Ashtanga Yoga. When you take Hare Krishna, this pranayama and everything is there.
Yes, yeah. But that's not, if a person wants to practice, they can, So I would like to conclude by asking, how many feel that you have at least a overview understanding in your mind of the entire chapter? So let's say, for a practical example, let's say if you lay down tonight to go to sleep, you could at least narrate a beginning of it, some portion from the middle, and some portion from the end. How many could do that? Haribol! Haribol!